have a confession to make, guys. I don't really love anime anymore. Now, I know that sounds crazy to say because my whole channel is basically about anime and anime adjacent things like manga and light novels, but hear me out because the reason that I don't love it might not be the reason you are thinking of. Moreover, when I'm talking about anime, I'm not talking about I would say the community as a whole. Like, I don't hate it because of Danganronpa cosplayers or because of Genshin Impact players or anything like that, right? Like, I'm not talking about, this is not a Miyazaki anime was a mistake moment, which I know is fake. Okay, hold your horses. I know that's a fake moment, right? But yeah, I don't really love anime anymore. And as a matter of fact, I'll confess to you right now, I don't really watch anime anymore. Like, I don't watch it. I just don't. But before we get to the reason why I don't love it and maybe even hate it just a teensy bit, let's start from when I grew to love it. Let me take you back to my childhood. I had my brief stints with anime when I was a kid, just like everybody else. I watched Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! I distinctly remember a friend of mine be sitting inside the room of a friend of mine after school and us watching Blue Exorcist and me being like, wow, this is pretty interesting. I haven't really seen anything like this. But it didn't really click until I was in high school. And I was going through a rough period in my home life. And one day I just decided to watch Tokyo Ghoul, and I just binged all of Tokyo Ghoul one night. And then the following night I binged all of My Love Story, right? And then the following night I binged all of Danganronpa. And then for some reason Shuffle the night after that. Like, I don't know why I binged Shuffle, but I binged Shuffle, I guess. And that's when I really locked in and my love for anime grew exponentially. And since then I just watched anime nonstop pretty much through the rest of my high school years up until I even entered college and stuff. I kind of, when I slowed down considerably, I was already above 400 anime, which I'm not saying this to brag that I completed 400 anime. I'm saying it so that you can see that I really was about that life. I really was doing nothing but watching anime. I was going to anime movie screenings. I was there when Liz and the Blue Bird came out for the first time in movie theaters. Like, I was really about that life. And understandably so, because my attachment to it came from an emotional place. I was emotionally vulnerable, and this fantastical kind of medium that is anime helped me get through that stuff when I found something that was unique, stuff that I had never seen before, stuff that entrapped me. I remember watching Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood for the first time and being legitimately excited and wanting to share with everybody. So my love for anime comes from a very genuine place. It wasn't just that I watched Dragon Ball and then I went and watched Demon Slayer and then I went and watched, Jujutsu Kaisen, and that's my engagement with anime. No, it was definitely engaged in a deep sentimental place. I also engaged with anime YouTubers, and I still to this day go to anime conventions. I've even cosplayed a couple times. There's anime art. I support anime artists. There's a bookshelf. I have 2 bookshelves full of manga and light novels right next to me as I record this. So I say all that to say that I really love the culture that is anime. Now, to the reason why I kind of fell out of love with the medium itself, with animation coming from Japan. Well, let's again go back a little bit and let's think back to when I started to get into manga, right? So I'm getting into anime. I'm super into anime. I'm already like 100 or so anime in, and then I ran into, and it was like some romance anime that I didn't even care about that much, but it was one of those where you just knew it was never gonna get another season because it released like in 2010 or something. It might have been like Showman Sample or something dumb like that, but either way, I watched the anime, and at the time, me being a high schooler, I was like, I want to know how it ends. I want to know how it ends. So then I go and read the manga, and have a blast with the manga. Then, kind of learning to read through a manga. I've always been a book guy, so I visit bookstores a lot. So then I see in Barnes & Noble and then used bookstores, I see manga there. And I'm like, wouldn't it be cool? I have nothing to do with my money, with my little part-time job money. What if I start collecting manga? So then I start collecting manga. And then similar to anime, I just lock in. Once I started collecting manga, obviously I started collecting stuff like the Akira box set. So I read all of Akira, like the original manga of Akira, which is fantastic, top-notch. I started reading Yotsubato, right, which is a pretty much the best slice of life manga you could ever read. I started reading Dorohedoro, a manga that I don't think could be replicated anywhere else, even though the anime is pretty solid as well. So I get into manga more and more, I lock in, and when that happens, I start to distance myself a bit from anime because I start to read a lot of the manga, and then the anime comes out, and then I watch the anime excitedly, and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't hit the same, right? Like, the voice acting is nice, I guess, the animation isn't bad, but yeah, I think I'm just gonna stick to this manga right here. And this starts happening more and more. So more and more I start disconnecting from, say, like seasonal anime and stuff like that. Then I get into light novels, and the same thing happens. I'm like, whoa, like, oh, the Saga of Tenny the Evil, Overlord, these light novels, especially like Danmachi, I remember specifically being like, this could never be replicated in anime unless it got proper treatment and got proper respect from a proper studio, and it didn't, right? Like, the Danmachi anime is fine, but it doesn't even hold a candle to the type of dynamic writing that the light novel has, especially in the fight scene department. So this starts happening with more and more series, and I distance myself from anime more and more and more and more until I just have no idea what's going on in anime. Up until this day, I pretty much don't really engage with anime at all. I just read light novels, I just read manga. That's why if you scroll back in my videos, that's pretty much all I talk about nowadays, because I don't watch anime, right? I'm not in good authority to talk about it because I don't engage with it. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I would fall out of love with it, right? So where does the part of me falling out of love with anime come from? Well, I could be objective and I could say that, oh, well, anime just doesn't hold a candle to these other mediums because of X, Y, or Z reason, right? Like, it's a valid thing to say because there is a difference between mediums. Like, this is actually something that people have studied, like difference between visual mediums and written mediums. There is a difference there. There's actually a book I have in my bookshelf called The Art of Adaptation, and the first couple of chapters talk about the things movies could never replicate from books, right? Like, there's certain things books do that movies just have a harder time replicating. One of the things it brings up is you as a reader filling in the blanks. So, for example, if you're reading a book and the book says that there's a beautiful sunset outside the window, right? You, if you have an imaginative mind, you're going to imagine what you personally consider a beautiful sunset. But a movie, it has to replicate that visually, with audio, with acting, and with cinematography. There's way too many factors kind of floating around, and it's the same for anime, right? You have to consider animation, you have to consider voice acting, directing, and color grading. So basically, it just says that the more complicated a medium is, the harder it gets to hit the nail on the head. So this is very much a real thing. By the way, it's raining outside. I don't know if you guys can hear it. If you can, just enjoy the ambience. Unfortunately, I can't shut the windows up, whatever. But yeah, this starts becoming more and more of a thing for me, where I'm just actively thinking, yeah, this isn't working the way the light novel should, or the way the manga should, etc. And there are plenty of popular examples, right? Like the most recent one is Sakamoto Days. The Sakamoto Days manga, spectacular manga. I believe a manga that a lot of people, I'm not an artist, but if you are an artist and you want to do fight scenes, that's a manga you should study, along with maybe something like Soul Eater. I feel like it's the only thing that's on par with it in terms of fight scenes, Fire Force. So it's a spectacular action manga. Anime comes out pretty mid. Is that a bad thing? Yes. Is it disappointing? Yes. The thing that is the most disappointing about that, right, is that there's going to be people that watch that anime and never engage with the manga because the anime is kind of mediocre. And this is kind of what started jading me. So when I say that I fell out of love with anime, what I mean is that I fell out of love with the culture surrounding it, that is people that only engage with watching anime, right? Like, they would not think twice about picking up the source material, whether that be the light novel or the manga. They would never think of picking up the source material. That's kind of where I started to get a little jaded. Now you might think, okay, well, bad adaptations happen all the time, but there's also incredible adaptations that elevate things, right? Jujutsu Kaisen would be the most popular, Demon Slayer as well. Their manga art, kind of meh, right? I would Hunter x Hunter, like, all the art styles there are kind of meh. The core of the ideas is there, yes, but the animation in the anime elevates them because it's a polished product that works a lot better, right? So, and there's thousands of examples of this, of stuff where the manga is kind of bad, whether because of pacing or the art or whatever, same with the light novels, and then the anime just polishes it up and packages it in one nice, concise season, and things get improved. And of course, anime also has a bunch of original things. Say Gainax and Studio Trigger and stuff, pretty much they've always just specialized on nothing but original ideas. So there's plenty of original anime ideas that are just like impossible to replicate in the medium of manga or light novel to the same degree, to the same impact, like Mamoru Hosoda movies, right? Or like Your Name and Weathering with You, that kind of stuff. Ghibli movies, you would never be able to replicate that in those other mediums, so I'm not taking anything away from that. So I get that, but still, like, the amount of people that will only engage with anime ever, it's discouraging to see those people put down series over time, just from my time reading light novels and reading manga, series that I personally consider to be solid, and put it down solely because of the anime, its adaptation. Sakamoto Days is a good example of that, like I said, but there's also, on the light novel side, a lot of light novels that are very solid, that got disregarded as anime, right? Makane recently, fantastic adaptation. That one got a lot of acclaim. But another one that I think is just as good, bottom tier character Tomosaki, did not get as much attention because the anime was kind of just meh. It was just kind of like a romance anime. There was not that much effort put into shaping the story into the anime format, right? There's also, of course, Boogie Pop is kind of considered the first light novel ever, and the old anime is fantastic. It's like a good experimental vision into what Boogie Pop should be. The new anime from Madhouse, kind of meh. Very straightforward adaptation, very little artistic integrity there. Also disappointing, right? A series that I loved, kind of the disappointing anime. The previously mentioned Danmachi, the fight scenes in the light novel are so vivid. You can literally picture the animation in your head, which I don't know how that's possible when you're reading a light novel, but it's possible. But the anime is kind of meh. The anime is kind of ugly, honestly, right? Overlord, the rich world building, kind of just falls apart in the anime because there's no effort put into actually conveying that visually. The visuals of the anime do not even reach the level of like the words on a page, the words on a page of a volume, and that's very discouraging. And a lot of people will judge the series solely based on that adaptation. So what that did with my brain is that I started to see anime as an assembly line, and that really jaded me, right? Because yes, there's a lot of fantastic anime coming out pretty consistently, but at the same time, I personally started to see a lot of it of like as just like, yeah, this is just a walking billboard. It's a very jaded thing to see stuff as, and I'm not disregarding the hard work of the people that work on anime, not by any means, but the way a lot of things were getting handled, that's how I started to see them. Oh, these are just walking billboards for these light novels or manga, right? Like that's just how, because I would see them, I would compare them to the source material, and I would be like, no effort was put into making this as enjoyable as that, right? You didn't capture the essence of what the light novel or the manga was. You just kind of put the story in animation and then you shipped that out. And this became even more prominent when the isekai nuclear bomb went off, right? And like the isekai radiation spread everywhere. Like isekai just got splattered all over the anime world. That's when it happened the most, because I was just seeing so many series that were so mediocre in anime form but perfectly acceptable in light novel form. My favorite examples I like to use are Isekai Smartphone, Another World with My Smartphone, and Death March to the Other World Rhapsody, because the light novel and even the manga of those is okay. It's not great, it's not fantastic writing or anything, but it's not bad either, right? It's just fun. It's kind of like what a lot of other manga are, just a fun kind of fantasy isekai transportation story with overpowered protagonists, which there's plenty of in shonen as well, right? But because the adaptations were so bad, and because the only thing that was getting included was the tropes that we would see in every other isekai, and all kind of like the juicy parts that were in the light novel, those were getting left out, right? Like the world building and the character, the inner monologues of the character that differentiate, that, you know, help you tell them apart from one another, because hey, I might love isekai, but they do all look the same, right? All the protagonists do look the same. All that stuff was getting kind of squeezed out. It was getting squeezed out. The light novel gets squeezed out, and then all that you're left with is the husk, and you call that husk the anime. That's what it felt like when I was seeing a lot of light novel adaptations come to the screen. So that was part of it. Another part of it is that if you start engaging with the source, with the well of ideas, all this stuff comes from, like light novels and manga, you get a little too ahead of the curve, if that makes sense. Take, for example, like, and this is not a flex, this is just a fact. I was there reading like the first 2 chapters of Chainsaw Man. I distinctly remember reading the first 2 chapters of Chainsaw Man and being like, wow, this is pretty unique. This is pretty awesome. Like, this is legitimately super impressive. I can't wait to see where this goes. And then, you know, I don't know if it was a year or years later, we get the anime, and it finally blows up amongst like regular anime fans. There's people that engage with manga that were already reading it at the time, but it doesn't really blow up the way it did until the anime comes out. So that's kind of a moment where you're just there and you're like telling everybody that this thing is so great, but nobody really cares, right? Everybody's just like, yeah, whatever, dude. And then it gets an anime and everybody's like, oh my god, yeah, you're right, it was fantastic, it's great, it's awesome, and everybody's cosplaying them and stuff. And I would be happy about this if I wasn't a hater, but I'm a hater. I'm a hater and I'm a contrarian. I love loving things that are not popular, and I love hating on things that are popular. So for me, this is like torture. Seeing something that I read and I'm like, this is super cool, and then years later down the line it gets an anime adaptation and then everybody thinks it's cool. It's my least favorite thing. The same thing happened on the light novel side with the Apothecary Diaries. If you're a light novel fan and you've been a light novel fan for a while, everybody and their mama was recommending the Apothecary Diaries, and with good reason. It was fantastic, right? But it getting a good anime adaptation was even kind of becoming a meme. Like, nobody knew it was going to get an anime adaptation. Nobody knew if it was going to be a good adaptation, right? But we were all championing the Apothecary Diaries as this fantastic light novel that was deserving of praise from people outside the light novel scope, from manga readers and anime watchers. But that didn't happen until the anime adaptation came along, and then all of a sudden, because it was good, it was a good adaptation, everybody loved it, and that would be fine. But then what if it wasn't good? Because there's a lot of series that are like that. There's a lot of series where the adaptation wasn't good. What happens then? Will anime watchers say, well, there's something here though? You got a glint in your eyes, kid. Let me go check out the light novel. Let me go check out the manga. No. Chances are they'll just be like, yeah, that kind of sucked, and they'll move on. That's the part that has frustrated me about kind of like anime watching culture, and it's a very long-winded way of putting it, but that's how I want to phrase it, because I don't want to say that this is all anime fans or that this is anybody that's into the culture of, like, say, cosplay or reading manga or collecting manga, or if you watch anime, but you also keep up with manga, and you also check out a light novel here and there. Like, there's all varieties of people. Like I mentioned in a video a bit back, it's definitely a very fragmented fandom now, right? Like, you can find a lot of very niche spots in the fandom, like light novel lovers, isekai lovers, otome game lovers, shonen lovers, seinen lovers. Like, because of the way the internet is structured nowadays, it's very easy to find your particular niche and have your algorithm only exist in that niche. So I don't want to disparage anybody, but yeah, like, just the culture of being somebody who's an anime fan, but you don't want to engage with anything that isn't animated. That's what made me fall out of love with anime more and more. And at the time, the discourse only revolved around anime adaptations, and to this day, I feel like that's still the dominating part of it. There's people that talk about manga and light novels, like myself and many others that are fantastic creators, but right, the stuff that dominates it, the people that go and do their big podcasts or talk about it to the culture as a whole, they're still only gonna talk about the anime. The people that are talking about Dan now, we're not talking about Dan when the first or third or fifth or sixth volume was out. They only talked about it when the anime was out, right? Is there a discredit to that? Is there a downside to that? Maybe not. I do feel like I'm just a hater. Like, I'll be completely transparent about that. I am a hater, and I am a contrarian, and it frustrates me, and it's not that big of a deal, but it is kind of this thing where, like, if things could be shaped differently, I would love for people to want to engage with where the things come from, because a lot of times they're better than the adaptation it gets. And like I said, I don't think I'll ever be able to restructure my brain to not see a lot of anime as just walking billboards nowadays, right? Very jaded. And it doesn't apply to all of the animes, of course. Like, you can go look at my anime list. I have plenty of anime that I love and are fantastic and prefer over manga, but just that the culture of only engaging with that and not seeking out the stuff where the sausage gets made, right? The amateur writers of the light novel space, the passionate artists of the manga space, disparaging all that and judging only an adaptation that maybe was not made with love at all. Maybe it was just made by hardworking animators, sure, but hardworking animators that are only seeing this as their job, right? Not as a artistic expression, because animation is a collaborative kind of project. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think. Am I tripping? Am I crazy? Do you guys agree? Do you think, yeah, like, anime in and of itself has becoming very isolated? Even more, I think even more now that it's more accessible to go read manga and go read light novels. Has anime become more isolated? Like, do the opinions of anime watchers hold less weight nowadays? Or do you think it's the same? Do you prefer anime over light novel or manga? Do you find it an easier medium to consume? Do you think there's something about it that's magical that you can't find in the other two? This was just kind of a rambling video. It was just a thing that was in my head. I spit it out, so you guys feel free to spit out whatever you're thinking in the comments too. I appreciate you guys for watching. This is a longer one. Take care, guys.